this is a little bit research-oriented talk. If there's any terminology that I'm not familiar, you can interrupt me at any time to ask for clarification. Or if you still have questions about my talk, about my project, we can have a longer offline conversation. All right, thank you. So first I'll start with my recent research in a fintech area within the past 3 to 5 years. So basically I want to develop some machine learning models, especially nowadays the large language model based Gen AI models to help the business leaders for their decision making, right? And then several financial related tasks, including extracting key kind of the insights from lengthy financial documents, like annual reports, earnings conference calls, right? It takes time for us to digest. What if we have some tools to help you extract those key ingredients from those documents? That's one. And then the second one is, can we make some of the document generation automated, right? That's also the talk that I'm focusing on today. And then we also do a lot of research related to risk estimate, risk forecast using deep learning and large language models. And then we also recently worked on a project that is for the startup success prediction. That's collaborating with a investment company called R. Next slide, please. So here's today's topic, right? So it's titled Evaluating Alignment Large Language Models with Financial Analysts from Reports to Market Impact. If I want to use one sentence to summarize what is this project about, it is we try to automate financial analyst report. That's it, right? So we're going to develop a tool to help those analyst reports to generate reports. That's the general idea. All right, so first I'll give you some background. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the earnings conference calls, right? So the earnings conference call is a live discussion. So for those executives, they present and explain the firm financial performance, right? So typically they have two sections. The first one is the statement. So basically it's the prepared, right? It's the pre-prepared statements from executives, usually the CEOs or CFOs. And then following that is the Q&A section. So the Q&A section basically is the questions asked by those institutional or individual investors or those media and press sort of the agents, right? And then the earnings conference call is a good kind of the information source for investors to understand the performance of the firm, right? And then usually after this quarterly earnings conference call, the institutional, like those financial analysts, they write their reports. And then those reports are kind of the important information for decision makers, right? They're going to look at those reports. For example, asset manager may look at those reports, right? Sometimes within the report it has some predictions or the analysts their own opinions about the performance of this firm in the next, let's say, a year or several quarters, right? Next slide, please. So this is just one example to show you a financial analyst report. This is written by the real analysts, the real people, right? So as you can see, it has some like target price. This is kind of the prediction price with the existing price. So it has some prediction or the forecast. It also has the section called the summary, but this is not fixed, right? So different analysts may have their own style. So this is a summary. Summary is about what the topic's being talked within an earnings conference call, right? So basically what those executives has been talking about the firm. Next slide, please. And then within, this is another kind of the, from a different the institutions. This is the report written by a different analyst report. Next slide, please. And then from this one, you can see, I just highlight, so those analysts that can provide their own opinions, not just to simply summarize what has been done or what has been discussed within the earnings conference call. They also have their own opinions. Right, Right, next slide, please. So now, those analyst reports are very important, right, in terms of information intermediary. Investor guidance, as I said, right, because those investors may rely on those information to make their sort of final investment decisions, right? So, and then literature has already shown that the analyst report has the big impact on the market. So basically, they have a huge impact on the market or the market action of a particular firm. Next slide, please. Second one, not everyone can access those huge amount of analyst reports, right? They are only accessible to the paid subscribers, right? So if you want to access those analyst reports from, let's say, for other companies, right, you have to pay. So there's the information kind of the asymmetry, right? So I may have, I paid, you may not have, right? Next slide, please. Number three, for this analyst, so during like peak earnings seasons, each analyst may cover, usually they may cover several sort of the companies, right? And then each earnings conference call, when they write the analyst report, right? So each earnings conference call could be more than 1 hour kind of the discussion. So if you convert them into transcript in text, can be more than 10,000 words. So if an analyst covers multiple companies, they have to read lots of text documents and then write their own analyst reports, right? It takes time. So that means the labor-intensive task. All right, given those three, right? So, and then as the researcher or the practitioner, we were thinking, can we make this process automated? It's a very natural question in our mind, right? So since this is very important, right, and then this is not accessible to everyone, and then it's a labor-intensive kind of task. Is there a way that we can automate this process? Nowadays, it's a good kind of the time for us to think about this question. And then I'm sure in your mind, you all have the answer. That is LLM, large language models. Because we have seen many great success in text summarization, in text completion, in natural language understanding. Right? And then, I mean, obviously we'll also focus on this here. And then the question in our mind, let's say, suppose we can do this report automation using large language models. How good that model is, or how good that report being generated by machines is compared to the human written reports, right? That's the first question in our mind. And then we look at the literature. Let's say, suppose that this is the report generated by large language model. This is the report written by human. And then you have to do the comparison, side-by-side comparison, right? And then there are many factors can affect the difference, right? We can say these two reports are completely different in terms of A, B, C, and D. And then we look at the literature, because the analyst report are very important information source for market reaction, right? And then we need to think, what are the factors within the analyst report are more important or play a role in market reaction, right? And then we look at the literature, those are the 5 major factors. The first one is the content coverage. So what is the content coverage? That means whatever topics have been talking about in the earnings conference call should be covered in the analyst report, right? Still remember that summary section, right? You don't want to miss relevant or irrelevant topics within the earnings conference call. That's important. So that's the first one, first dimension. And then the second one is the readability. When you generate an analyst report through large language model, so that report must be readable. That can have an impact on the market reaction. Number 3, the sentiment. Number 4 is the tone, right? We have 2 different ways to measure the sentiment. So how positive it is, how negative it is. And then in terms of the tone, is this the positive towards, is the negative towards? And then number 5 is the language style, the way you communicate, the way you try to deliver information in the text-based report can have an impact on the market reaction. right? So those are the 5 major dimensions that can tell us how good of a report being generated by a machine, right? Or how good a report being generated by a human being, right? Basically, those are the 5 major dimensions. We're going to use them as the ways to measure how good the report being generated by LLM. Next slide, please. All right, and then we did a kind of the preliminary test, right? Let's say without any alignment, without any fine-tuning, we just do some prompt engineering. I'm sure you're all familiar with prompt engineering since you have been interacting with ChatGPT, right? So whatever questions or the instructions you send to the ChatGPT, that's what we call the prompt engineering. So we did some kind of the prompt engineering and then asked different large language models to generate analyst reports for us. Right? As I said, those are the 5 major dimensions can affect the quality of the report. And then we measure it. Later I'm going to show you how we're going to measure, right, in detail. And then as you can see, so the brown one, the outside, I mean out of those 5, right, so 5, so topic coverage and then topic, I divide them. But anyway, those are the 5 major. As you can see, with the GPT-4o, 4 Mini, DeepSeek, and then Llama, which is the open source model, and GPT are from OpenAI, they're closed source model. So you can see there's a gap, right, for every dimension. They're not well aligned, right, with the human written reports. And then later I'm going to show you we develop a method, try to reduce the gap for these 5 major dimensions. Next slide, please. All right, and then, so the question in our mind is, so this is the 0 shot. We don't change anything about the large language model, right? Because those are the generic large language model. They are very good at the general natural language understanding or natural language generation. So the natural question would be, can we fine-tune those large language models? That's basically, we want to tweak this large language model a little bit to make the model understand or shift towards in the context of finance. Because those models are not developed specifically for financial text understanding. So we're gonna fine-tune a little bit, right? So, and then when we want to fine-tune, we want to fine-tune them along these 5 dimensions, right? Not in general finance context, along with these 5 major dimensions. Next slide, please. So this is kind of give you the overview of what is what we call LLM alignment in our context. Right? I'm sure you all know for the OpenAI, when they developed the ChatGPT, so the first ChatGPT has the general capability of natural language understanding. And then they did 2 more kind of the fine-tuning steps. One is what they call SFT, supervised fine-tuning, right? To make the model more able to follow human instructions, to understand user intentions, right? And then further, at the end of 2022, so when the ChatGPT was released, we all complained about the hallucination issues, right? So the response generated by the ChatGPT was not correct, was dishonest, was non-helpful. And then OpenAI further improved their model with what they call the alignment, the human feedback incorporated. Try to improve the helpfulness, honesty, and reduce the harmfulness. Right, next slide, please. And then in our context, we don't want to lose the general capability of the large language model. That means the model we want to improve still has the general capability of natural language understanding. On top of that, I want the model to be able to understand financial text. And then on top of that further, I want the model to be able to write reports in these 5 dimensions that are capable or aligned with the human being. So there are 3 kind of the layers. First, general large language model. And then a model can understand financial context. And then a model can help us write human level reports within these 5 dimensions. So those are the kind of the three steps. All right, next slide, please. All right, and then you may think there are many potential approaches, obviously, in our mind. How can we do the model alignment with the specific objectives? So here objectives are those 5 dimensions, right? We want to model to be able to write human-like reports in these 5 dimensions. The first potential approach is what we call the RLHF, right? That's the generic technology, it's not developed by us. But for that method, it requires you to have a trained reward model. Basically, you're going to tell the system, hey, how good this response is from that model. And then you incorporate that the quality or the reward back to the model to improve the model. Right? That's the one. The second one is very straightforward. As I said, we're going to use the prompt-based approaches. We do some prompt engineering, right? With or without demonstration to tell the model, hey, within this context, you should be able to do blah, 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 with the instructions. And then the third one is kind of within the recent 2 to 3 years, the new technology. It's also the alignment technology called the DPO, Direct Preference Optimization. So this is very similar to RLHF, but it doesn't require us to develop a separate reward model. So that's the beauty. But what you need to do is you have to provide a preference model. So basically, you're going to tell the model, hey, you are prefer this one over this one, right? Or you prefer this one because this one gives you higher reward or higher rating, something like that. Right? Next slide, please. And then here, so within this research, by the way, most of the work are done by 2 of my PhD students, right? So I get kind of very few, I just present, so what most of the work they did. All right, so 1 second. So the general idea of this work is what we call the multi-objective alignment framework. Next one. And then I'll give you the general idea of what is this being done. Right. Okay, so I have a general large language model. Let's say I'm going to use the Q1. You guys know the Q1? Okay, so that's the open source. Why am I going to pick that? Because we tried others. This one gives us great performance. Okay, so let's say we're going to use the Q13 as the open source large language model. All right. So I have the earnings conference call transcripts. Later I'm going to show you how many we use. And then we also have human written analyst reports. Right, I just put them together. Right, I just put them together. So this is kind of the financial text background or the financial text context. I have set up the financial text, and then I do self-supervised tuning. So basically, let this Q1 model, generic large language model, to be able to understand financial text. That's it. I don't do any alignment here. So that means after this, what we call SFT, then this model, Q13 now, I call Q13 prime, for example, is able to understand financial context. Right? It's able to understand the financial context. Next slide, please. Alright, so now I'm going to do the alignment. So I want to do the step 3, right? Step 1 is provided by Q13, and then step 3 is what we just showed, right? That kind of the SFT, next token prediction. And then now we're going to get into that alignment. So make the model be able to write human-like reports along with those 5 dimensions. So what we did, it's very simple. So I have the earnings conference call transcript. I'm going to send, like the human analyst, how do they write the report? So the only information they rely on, I wouldn't say only, so the majority of the information they rely on is the earnings conference call. It's the earnings conference. They may have some other knowledge or some other data from other sources. But let's say they rely on this earnings conference call. All right, I'm going to send this earnings conference call to the model we just fine-tuned. Okay? And then, obviously, the model will generate a report. Right? I mean, obviously, that report is not good. Next slide, please. So that report is not good. And then we do have the real human written reports. Right? So we have the human written reports. And then we have LLM generated reports. And then along with these 5 major dimensions, for each dimension, I can calculate the reward. So how good they match each other. Does that make sense? So that means, let's say, within the first dimension, so the distance between these two could be very far. That means the report we generated from this model is not good within that dimension. Okay, and then we have reward 1, reward 2, reward 3, and then we have 5 rewards. And then next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. So let's say once we have those rewards, then we're gonna design a way to summarize those reports, right? Simply speaking, you can say I just sum them up, or I just take the average, right? So the technical detail. Excuse me. I'm gonna ignore the technical details. It's called the group relativity policy optimization. So with this reward, you'll summarize the reward. So the intuitive idea is, if those rewards, the overall reward is very high, that means the quality of this reports being generated by LLM is very good. They're closer to the human written reports. If those rewards are very low, that means, hey, you have to change your model a little bit because the reports you generate are not good enough. Does it make sense? That's what we call alignment. And then this is the iterative process, right? That's what we call the training process, the iterative process. Next slide, please. All right, so now that's the general idea. So now I'm going to show you what data we use. So we use obviously the quarterly earnings conference call transcript. Total we have about from S&P 500, 2024. And then later I'm going to show why we're going to use the 2024. Because for those large language models, they have the knowledge cutoff, right? So when they train, they have the knowledge cut. I don't want those large language models to be, let's say they have already seen those earnings conference calls. Obviously they do better, right? So there's a knowledge cutoff. So we focus on 2024 from S&P 5. In total, we have about 1,300 earnings conference calls. Next slide, please. And then we also download the human written analyst report. For each company, we have more than, per earnings conference call, we have about 10 reports from different institutes, not just one institute. Next. All right, so let's look at the kind of the benchmarks, right? So what are the baseline methods we can design? The first one is obviously very intuitive, is the prompt-based method, right? So the input is the earnings conference call plus the prompt, right? This is just one example to show you prompt, and then we try the GPT model, and then you may wonder, why don't you try GPT-5? So because when we start this project, GPT-5 was not released, right? We plan to try it when we submit this paper for peer review. We're going to do that, right? And then see, we used the Llama 3.1. We didn't use the Llama 3.3. So now they also have Llama 4. So we will plan to try that. And then Q13, 4B, okay? So, and then we also try the specialized model, FinGPT. It turns out the FinGPT is really bad, right? And then, I don't know if you guys know, the FinGPT and even the Bloomberg GPT, the quality is really bad. Even Bloomberg decided to abandon, so they don't want to use the Bloomberg GPT. It's really bad. Next slide, please. All right, and then, so that's just the one, the overall, you give a prompt, and then let the model generate a report. And then since we want the model to be aligned with these 5 dimensions, obviously, we should tell the system within the prompt, hey, you are not just aligning overall, you are aligning within these 5 specific dimensions, right? So then we're going to explicitly specify those 5 dimensions within the prompt. Next slide, please. And then obviously recent technologies called DPO, direct preference optimization. So as I said, it doesn't require to develop a separate reward model, but you have to provide a preference data. What is the preference data here? Preference data is, I prefer human written report over machine generated, right? That's the preference data. All right, next slide, please. All right, so now let's get into how can we evaluate. Let's say we implement this model, our own model, with those baselines, and then we need to evaluate how good your report being generated by the machines are. So the first one is the quality. So I want to do some face validity, whether the report is generated do they make sense? Right, next slide, please. So here's the report generated by the machine. This is kind of title, and this is some starting point. Next slide. And then this is the key points. And then the reason I want to highlight those, because some of them, like the numbers, they are correct because we verified. You know, for the large language, when you do some simple math calculation, usually you're going to have some hallucinated results. But here, I guess because we use the recent Q13, so that's why you can reduce the hallucination issue, right? Next one. And then you can see some of them are the summary or their own opinions, not just a simple extraction. All right, next slide. That's just the quantity. So now let's look at the quantitative. how can we evaluate the model? So as we said, the objective here is we want to reduce the gaps within those 5 dimensions between human written and machine generated. Next one. First, let's look at the readability and coverage, right? So this is the readability, this is the coverage. Coverage is the topic coverage, right? From the earnings conference call. And then we have the human analysis, and then we wonder, what are those numbers? So those numbers are calculated based on the ways to measure readability. So like those Gaussian fog, it's just the index to measure the readability, right? We have different ways, like a Fletcher Kincaid. That's also a different way to measure how readable a text is, a text document is, right? And then for the content coverage, so basically we're going to calculate the overlap between what we generated using machines and what human written. So their overlap, how good it is. As you can see, for most of this is our multi-objective, multi-value Q1. This is the Q1 DPO. It's also very good in terms of the readability, right? And then in terms of the content coverage, I wouldn't say our model dominates, but in most of the cases, for most of different kind of the evaluation metrics for the content coverage, so our model is relatively good. Next slide, please. This is for the language style, right? So language style, I don't know if you realize, those for each of those dimensions. For example, what's the percentage of the adverbs you can use? How many conjunction words you can use? How many negation words you can use? How many prepositions and pronouns? So different kinds of words you use in the report, right? For the machine generated and human written, and then those numbers are based on some measures. The lower the better for this table, for this language style. And then from this table, we can see that there's no single model dominates, obviously, right? But in majority cases, we can see our method performs better. All right, next one. So this is the sentiment and tone. So we have two different ways to measure the sentiment and tone. One is at the word level. So basically, we want to see how many positive words or the what percentage, what ratio in terms of the positive words, negative words, and uncertainty words, and then some, if this is called modular words and litigation words, so different one. And this is at the document level. So not just at the word level, this is at the document level. So we want to see the semantic sentiment, not just to look at the individual words, right? The overall sentiments, not just the word level. So because at the word level, the more positive doesn't mean the overall document is positive, right? That the overall document is positive. Next slide, please. All right, so that's the first kind of the way, the quantity of evaluation. And then we also conduct another quant evaluation, which is, let's say, suppose so far you are convinced the report being generated by our model is good. And then one of the natural questions in your mind is, can I really rely on the report generated by your machine, right? Because we said for those financial reports have a huge impact on the market reaction. Can I use the report generated by your machine for the market reaction prediction, right? If that one can be, let's say, have the similar performance as human report, then we see your report generated by your machine is useful. I would say it's useful, right? So that's what we did. So we want to test the usefulness in the downstream applications. Next slide, please. So it's very simple, right? So we have the earnings conference call with different large language models, including ours, and then we generate reports, and then we're going to use that report to predict. So there's a human written report, right? So this is our report, this is the human written report, and then we're going to send to some prediction models, right? Very traditional prediction model, for example, cumulative abnormal return prediction, right? Using those reports. And then we want to see whether the prediction accuracy or prediction performance gets closer to what we see using human written reports. If they are very close as compared to different baselines, then we can claim the reports being generated by our method is useful. It's useful. Yes. Next slide, please. So there are two different ways. One is the R square out of sample. The other one is just the prediction accuracy. Next slide, please. I'll quickly go. Next one. From this one, you can see that. So sorry. we do for different models, and then we're going to compare. This is kind of the difference between the human written and then the others. And then you can see the distance of our method from the human written report in terms of the out-of-sample prediction R square. It's the smallest. It's the smallest. Next one. This is for in terms of the prediction. The prediction, the report, error, MSE, mean square for the cumulative abnormal return using that. Yes.
Is report stock price or report the predict one?
The return, the cumulative abnormal return.
Oh.
The cumulative abnormal CAR, CAR. Yes. Next slide. All right, and then further, you know, for most of those large language model stuff, if you read the white paper from OpenAI, if you read the scientific publications from the computer science community, for every paper, they always include one section called human evaluation, right? We also need to do that because whatever you claimed based on those qualitative, quantitative, and then downstream applications, we are convinced, let's say your model is good. Does your model really pass the human kind of the level evaluation test? So that's what we did. Next slide. So I'm going to show you how we did this. So we have, let's say, suppose I'm going to use this Q1, and then Q1 multiple, that's ours, and then human. So we have, let's say, 3 reports. First report being generated by Q1, second report generated by our method, and then we also have human written reports, not just the 3 sets, right? 3 sets, right? Let's say each one is 100, and then we have 300. I just mix those 300. And then I'm going to send one report to a real human, ask, do you think this is written by human or machine? And then as you can see, for the real human report, 78% of the people are saying this is written by human. Oops, sorry. And then for our method, 72% of the people think this is really written by human. But for the Q1, that's the baseline, very good baseline, 60%. So to some extent, we can claim our model has some value in terms of the report generate like a human-alike report. So that's the human evaluation. All right, next slide. All right, to summarize, so we proposed the domain-specific alignment approach for the financial report generation under a systematic evaluation framework, along with these 5 dimensions. The reason we choose these 5 dimensions is because they are highly related to the market reaction from the existing literature in finance and accounting. Methodological-wise, we introduced the multi-objective alignment method tailored for this specific task in the finance context. And then we also showed that explicitly aligning on domain-specific dimensions can result in better performance than generic alignment methods, where we have shown. So when I say generic, one is the prompt-based, the other one is the DPO, direct preference optimization. And then obviously we obtain the good performance on the various kind of evaluation streams, qualitative, quantitative, and then human evaluation. I think that's it, what I have. Any questions? Yes. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much.